Good morning. We'd like to welcome you to another edition of the Sunday School Review. This week's Sunday School lesson is entitled Jesus Extends Forgiveness and is taken from John, the 8th chapter, verses 1 through 8 and verses 56 through 59. Now, we are still in the book of John. John is the author of the fourth gospel that bears his name. And John is also the author of Revelation. And John was an apostle of Jesus. Now, there are three outlines in our lesson today. The first outline is a judgmental conspiracy, and that's verses 1 through 6a. The second outline is judgment on judges. That is 6b, verse 6b through verse 11. And the third outline is authority to judge, and that is verses 56 through 59. Now, let's go to our first set of scripture. That is John, the 8th chapter, verses 1 through 6a. That's the first outline, a judgmental conspiracy. Now, in verse 1, it says, Jesus went unto the Mount of Olives. Now, this is just after the Feast of Tabernacles or the Feast of Booths. Some of the Jews went home, but many of them stayed afterwards. So verse 1 says, Jesus went unto the Mount of Olives. And verse 2 says, and early in the morning came again into the temple, and all the people came unto him, and he sat down and taught them. So the first thing Jesus did, he went out to the Mount of Olives, and then he came back. It says early in the morning, he came unto the temple court area, and began to teach the multitude. That's verse 2. Okay, now let's go to verse 3. And the scribes and the Pharisees brought unto him a woman taken in adultery. And when they had set her in the midst. Now, if you think about this, now the scribes and the Pharisees, just like last week, was when they questioned his credentials, questioned his authority to teach. That was last week's lesson. Now, this week's lesson, okay, they still trying to trap him, to get him to do something wrong where they can bring charges to put him to death, okay? Just like we talked about that last week. Okay, so verse 3 says, while Jesus was teaching, sitting down teaching, the scribes and the Pharisees interrupted his teaching session and brought to him a woman, they say, caught in adultery, taken in adultery, and sent her in the midst. Now, that is very embarrassing. That is very humiliating. Now, we're going to talk about some problems with that. Now, if you know the definition of adultery, as the old saying goes, it takes two to tango. So it did not say they brought the man and the woman, but they brought the woman. That's embarrassing. That's very humiliating. And they interrupted his teaching to bring her and sit her in the midst. That was embarrassing. It embarrassed her. Okay. So we said 3. So the question is this: why did they do this? We're going to talk about why did they do this? Okay. And in this lesson, it's going to show Jesus' humility and Jesus' wisdom and his willingness to forgive. But, okay, Jesus is going to use wisdom in this dialogue here. Now, verse 4 said, and they said unto him, that is Jesus, Master, this woman was taken in adultery in the very act. And as I said, if you know the definition of adultery, it takes two. The woman was not committing adultery by herself. There had to be someone else present. But no, there's nobody else present, just the woman that they drugged and brought in the midst of the multitude where Jesus was teaching. They interrupted him, really. Okay, now let's go to five. And this is what they say. Now Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned, but what sayest thou? As you say, it's a trap. It's a trap. Okay. Okay. According to the law of Moses, the prescribed punishment was death. That was the prescribed punishment. Okay. Now, if you want to go back to Leviticus 20 and 10 and read it there, it clearly states that the man and the woman should be stoned. Not the woman alone, man and according to Leviticus 20 and 10, both should be stoned. So right there, you see a problem right there. Okay. The law required both. Okay. So where is the man? You see the hypocrisy again of these scribes and Pharisees? They only brought the woman to embarrass the woman and to possibly trap. They're not going to trap, but their attempt was to trap Jesus. What do you say? The law of Moses prescribed death to both. Okay, let's go to that was verse 5. He said, what do you say? Okay. And verse 6, and they said, tempting him, testing him, okay, that they might have to accuse him. Okay, let's finish this verse here. Okay, well, actually, that's the first outline. The first outline stops at 6a, not 6b. Okay, 6a. Okay, they said, tempting him that they might accuse him. They wanted him to say, well, yes, according to the law of Moses, you should be stoned. Then they would accuse him of actually violating the law, because the law clearly says both should be stoned. Now, there's some other elements there we're going to talk about. So first of all, there's a problem right there. Where is the man? The man was probably one of them. We don't know, but he could have been one of them. But where's the man? Okay, so Jesus picks up on that. And now the multitude, now the scribes and the Pharisees, they were the lawyers. They were the experts in the law. The people, the multitude, they probably didn't know that. It was not like today, everybody had their own Bible. I mean, they didn't have Bibles anyway, it was scroll. And they was very expensive. So that the lay people did not know all of the various elements of the law. But these people clearly did. They were the experts in the law. They knew what the law said. They knew that the law required both. Okay, but the experts, but the lay people around the multitude that Jesus was teaching, they probably didn't know that. They're not experts in the law. If you go to a tax, a CPA, he's the one that know about the tax laws. You go to an attorney, he's the one that know about the various laws. They don't expect a lay person to know. Well, can you do that? Well, you the expert, tell me. Okay, they were the expert. They ought to know. Okay, they said let's go to that was 6A, and that was the first outline. A judgmental conspiracy. So it was a conspiracy. It was a setup. The second outline is judgment on the judges. That is those that judge. They came to him, wanted him to condemn the woman, and they end up the one being condemned. Jesus is going to condemn them. Okay, let's go to 6B. But Jesus stooped down and with his finger wrote on the ground. Now, what he wrote is unknown. We don't know what he wrote. But whatever he wrote condemned them. The scripture is silent as to what he actually wrote. But he wrote on the ground, and we're going to see what he wrote condemned them. Condemned the people that brought this woman to him, to Jesus. Okay. He stooped down and with his finger wrote on the ground. Verse 7, that's verse 6, verse 7. As I said, what he wrote was unknown. We don't know. Verse 7, so when they continued asking him, he lifted himself up. Remember, he stooped down. He humbled himself. He stooped down. He lifted himself up and said unto them, he that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her. Now, here's where it gets sticky. The law clearly said that of the witnesses, they were supposedly witnesses, of the witnesses that are going to witness this incident, first you have to be a witness, you have to witness it, which they said they called into their act, so they witnessed it. And secondly, they must have clean hands. They must be without sin. That's who can cast the first stone. Then the others can join in. But the witness, they have to have clean hands. They have to be without sin. Let's go back to verse 7, where Jesus said, he that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her. That was Jesus' statement to the scribes and the Pharisees. Let's go to verse 8. Okay, and again he stooped down and wrote on the ground. Again, we don't know what he wrote. Either time, we don't know what he wrote on the ground. But whatever he wrote condemned him. Okay, I've heard people speculate what he probably wrote, but it's silent. The scripture is silent. But whatever it is he wrote, it condemned him. It condemned him. And verse 9, let's go to verse 9. And they which heard it, those that heard it, being convicted by their own conscience. Okay, why? They went out one by one, beginning at the eldest and even unto the last. So, okay, they were convicted. What he wrote, convict them. And they probably remember, well, we don't have clean hands. We're not so sinless. We're not sinless. So, I mean, as again, they are experts in the law. You know what the law says. Okay, you got to be eyewitness and you got to have clean hands. And when he wrote, whatever he wrote, convicted them And they went out one by one from the oldest to the youngest. That's what verse 9 says. And let's finish up with verse 9. And Jesus was left alone. It was only Jesus and the woman standing there. The others, they were convicted and they slipped away. They slipped out. Okay? They slipped out. They slipped away because they were convicted, because they realized they were not sin free. They did not have clean hands, which was a requirement of the law. Okay, let's go back to 9. So Jesus was left alone and the woman standing in the midst. Now let's go to 10. And Jesus lifted up himself and saw none but the woman, and said unto her, Woman, where are those thine accusers? Okay, has no man condemned thee? Has no man condemned thee? And she said, No man, Lord. And Jesus said unto her, this is the key verse, Jesus said unto her, neither do I condemn thee, go and sin no more. So the only one standing there without sin was Jesus, only one, Jesus himself. Now, if you know what Jesus said, now, Jesus didn't say, well, yeah, go ahead on, you didn't do anything wrong, just go and do what you've been doing. Jesus told her, go and sin no more. He didn't give her the green light to go ahead and continue. Yeah, go ahead and continue in your sin. Okay. But he told her to go and sin no more. In other words, leave the life of sin. He didn't give her the permission to continue. Yeah, she sinned, so did the man. So he did not condone what she did. That's my point. Jesus did not condone what she did. He did not condemn her. So Jesus is about showing compassion. Yeah, she had sinned, and others had sinned too. The man had sinned, whoever he may have been. But Jesus is about showing compassion, showing forgiveness. That's what this lesson is about. This lesson is about Jesus extends forgiveness. Jesus could have condemned her, but he is about showing forgiveness, extending grace and mercy. He said, go and lead the life of sin no more. Okay, that's the second outline. So the judgment on the judges. They brought the woman to her so Jesus could condemn her, but the judges, these scribes and Pharisees, end up the ones being condemned. Okay, being judged. Rather, Jesus is about forgiveness, about showing compassion, about restoring. The scribes and the Pharisees is not about restoring; they're about condemning, not restoring. Jesus is about showing compassion, forgiveness, and restoring people. Okay, that's what Jesus is about. And verse 11, which again, as I said, is the key verse. Neither do I condemn you, go and sin no more. Which gives us the notion that Jesus is the only one that have the right to judge. Why? Because we all, the scripture says, we all have sinned and came short of the glory of God. So we don't have the right to sin. If you go back to like, I know we're not under the law. Okay, I understand that. Okay, but if you go back to that concept of having clean hands, we certainly don't have clean hands because the scripture tells us again, we all have sinned and came short. So Jesus is the only one that have a right to judge. Okay, because he's the only one without sin. And as this lesson here, it shows the scribes and the Pharisees' hypocrisy and casually bringing a woman when the very definition of adultery means that there were two people, at least two people involved. Had to be at least two people. The woman couldn't commit adultery by herself. And the law, Leviticus 20:10, clearly says both. So the other thing is, okay, Jesus gives us what we need. She needed forgiveness. She needed grace. Okay, she needed to be restored. Jesus gives us what we need, not what we deserve. In other words, if just a blanket statement, did she deserve, according to the law of Moses, to be a stone? Yes, she deserved, according to the law, and the man as well. But with Jesus, we don't get what we deserve, we get what we need. Okay. As they say, if we got what we deserve, we'd probably all be dead. Okay. So let's go to our last outline, and that's verses 56 of this 8th chapter through 56 through 59. And let's read, start at 56. Your father Abraham rejoiced to see my day, and he saw it and was glad. Then said the Jews unto him, thou art not yet 50 years old, and hast thou seen Abraham? But the Jews said unto them, verily, verily, I say unto you, before Abraham was, I am. In other words, Jesus is asserting his deity. He said, I existed before Abraham. Okay. At verse 58. 59 says, and they took up stones to cast at him, but Jesus hid himself. He slipped away. Jesus slipped away. Jesus hid himself and went out of the temple. Okay, he hid himself and went out of the temple. So because, as I said last week, his time to be crucified had not yet come. Yeah, they were trying to kill him, and eventually they did, but it's as they say, not before his time. Okay, and they picked up stone because they considered that statement, I existed before Abraham, blasphemy, because they didn't believe in him. The scribes and the Pharisees didn't believe in him. So they said, you claim to be equal with God. That's blasphemy. So they took up stones to try to kill him, but he avoided that, as I said, because it was not yet his time. And that's our lesson. The last outline is authority to judge. And again, only Jesus has the authority to judge, because the scripture clearly says all have sinned and came short of the glory of God. So this lesson talks about the grace of God. That is, not getting what we deserve, but getting what we need. Forgiveness, grace, and mercy. That's what Jesus is all about. The Pharisees and the scribes was all about condemning people. Okay, just like bringing this lady, condemning her, and carefully then bring the man and brought her and sit her in the midst while Jesus interrupted his teaching to bring this woman to shame her, okay, and have Jesus say, yeah, she should be put to death. And basically what he said, well, all of you all around here is not without sin. You don't have clean hands. According to the law, if you want to condemn somebody else, you need to have clean hands. You need to be without sin as per the law. And Jesus knew that, and they should have known that, and obviously they did, because they were scribes and Pharisees. They were the experts in the law. Again, the multitude probably didn't know that nuance, as you might say. That was a nuance in the law. They probably said, oh, this woman's caught in adultery, and yeah, they stoned them. But they didn't know the nuance. They didn't know, well, according to Leviticus 20 and 10, it has to be both, and the person that cast the first stone has to be without sin. The lawyers knew it, but the multitude probably didn't, and they wanted to trap Jesus into doing something and violating the law. Basically, yeah, he would have violated the law because he would allow people that don't have clean hands, as per the law, to execute someone. And they could get them on that and probably other things. But Jesus had too much wisdom for them. And that's our lesson today. We'd like to thank you for watching. We ask you to join us next week for another edition of the Sunday School with You. Thank you.